Pas de soleil, pas de soleil, pas de soleil, la-la-la. Pas de soleil, pas de soleil, pas de soleil, la-la-la.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Adulting with Hannah. I'm Hannah, here today to talk about all the books I read in 2021 as part of my 2021 recap series. If you haven't seen the other videos in this series, I hope you check them out. There's going to be 3 of them and this is number 2. So without further ado, I'm going to go through all the books I read in 2021. I don't think these are in order, so we're going to start with The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. I'm going to read a summary. Aidan Bishop knows the rules. Evelyn Hardcastle will die every day until he can identify her killer and break the cycle. But every time the day begins again, Aidan wakes up in the body of a different guest at Blackheath Manor. And some of his hosts are more helpful than others. With a locked room mystery that Agatha Christie would envy, Stuart Turton unfurls a breakneck novel of intrigue and suspense. It's one of those books that you really have to pay attention to and keep track of. I wouldn't recommend trying to read it over a long period of time. One of those ones that like you pick up and read a little bit before bed. It gets hard to keep track of all the details and all of the mystery and all of the clues and everything like that. But overall, it's a really good book. It's really intriguing. It's something that'll keep your mind busy. It'll keep you guessing. It's a really interesting idea. Some of it's a little far-fetched. Obviously, the entire plot is far-fetched, but sometimes it gets a little bit like they're grasping at straws sometimes, but then it all wraps up really nicely. Overall, I really enjoyed reading this. I actually did the audiobook of this and the audiobook narrator was great. But overall, I would give this book 3.5 stars. Next is Never Have I Ever by Jocelyn Jackson. I'm going to read the summary. To protect herself and her family and save the life she's built, Amy must beat the devil at her own clever game, matching wits with Rue in an escalating war of hidden pasts and unearthed secrets. Amy knows the consequences if she can't beat Rue. What terrifies her is everything she could lose if she wins. So this is one of those books that's like unearthing a secret sort of thing, and somebody knows her secret and she will do anything to prevent that secret from becoming known because it'll ruin her life, that sort of thing. It's very suspenseful and exciting. However, once you find out like what the secret is, you're just kind of like, why were you going to these lengths for that? Like, it's very hard to believe that somebody would do the things that this main character did in order to protect her secret when the secret's like really not something that I would think would ruin your life. So that part wasn't great. I thought that, I don't know, it was still a really exciting book, but when you get to the end, you're just like, all that for that? But otherwise it was well written. It has interesting characters, a pretty big plot twist, all that sort of stuff. Next is The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. Here's the summary. In 1791 London, Nella runs a secret apothecary shop, illegally dispensing poisons for women to kill men who have wronged them. When the authorities track her down, a young girl who has been helping her, Eliza, sacrifices herself to save Nella. But a possibly magic tincture Eliza made ends up saving them both, and Nella realizes that dispensing these poisons is not the way to cure the pain of betrayal. In present day, Caroline is a woman who has been betrayed by her husband. She finds a clue, a vial, about an apothecary shop, and tracks down its history, discovers Eliza's involvement, and ultimately decides to toss the vial back into the water to keep Eliza's secret. This book was interesting. I loved the parts about the 1700s London apothecary shop. I could have done without the present day main character. The author tries to add in like this big plot twist, like she's gonna get framed for a crime at the end, and it's really rushed. And I could have just done without the present day part. I would have rather just read an entire book about Nella and Eliza and the apothecary shop. So 50% good. I'll give it 3 stars. But again, I could have done without the present day part. Next up is Gods of Jade and Shadow by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. Here is the summary. Gods of Jade and Shadow spins a dark, dazzling fairy tale. Sylvia Moreno Garcia's novel is set in alternative jazz age Mexico, where gods and monsters from Mayan mythology walk the earth and war with each other over dominion of Chibalba, the land of death. So this book, the main character is a young woman who discovers that her grandfather has been holding captive the bones of a god of death that resides in Chibalba, which is a mythical land of gods, and she joins the god of death to find the rest of his body parts so he can return to Shibaba in his rightful place as the god of death. It's a really interesting book. I believe it's a young adult novel. The location and decade is actually like really interesting. It's set in like the 20s in Mexico, which is just not somewhere that I've read about a lot, and it's just really fascinating, kind of the culture of the time, and it's a really exciting story, and I highly recommend it to young adults and adults alike. I give this 4 stars. I thought it was very exciting and interesting, and if you're into mythology at all, you'll really like it. I've always been really interested in mythology, and this book just kind of gives you a little taste of that while also telling you a little bit about Mexican culture. Next is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Books that are a little bit more popular by her are The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones and the Six or something like that. Those are kind of her more popular books, but this is another one of hers. The synopsis is Malibu Rising is the story of the Riva family, surfer siblings Nina, Jay, Hud, and Kit, as well as their mother June and their father, the famous singer Mick Riva. It takes place over the 24 hours leading up to the Riva's infamous Riva party, but is also a culmination of generations of secrets and traumas. So this book kind of goes back in time and kind of tells the story of the family while also kind of building up this event of this big party at their house at the same time. I like books like that. I like books that kind of add in pieces as you go, but then there's like a current event that's happening. It kind of breaks things up a little bit and still tells a cohesive story. I know a lot of people don't like books like that though, that kind of go back and forth. So if you're not into that, I don't think you'd like this book. However, if you do, it's a really cool character development based book. It really teaches you about family and about their struggles and you know, things aren't always what they seem, that sort of thing. And the ending is really interesting. There's plot twists, etc. It's a good story. This is the only book I've read by Taylor Jenkins Reid so far, but I do plan on reading more because I really enjoyed this one. I give it 3.5 stars. Next is The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. Michaelides? I don't know. Here's the summary. In The Maidens, Mariana finds herself in the idyllic campus of Cambridge University after her niece Zoe's closest friend Tara has been murdered. Zoe believes the murderer is Professor Edward Fosca, the handsome and popular Greek tragedy professor on campus. Fosca is charismatic and idolized by his students, especially a group of female students known as the Maidens, named after the goddess Persephone. Despite his alibi, Mariana is convinced of Fosca's guilt and is drawn into the investigation, which soon grows more complicated when another body is found. Okay, this is the second book by Alex Michaelides. Again, I don't know if I'm saying that right. I'm sorry. This is his second book. His first one is called The Patient. No. His first one is called The Silent Patient. I read that one as well, just not in 2021. Guys, his books are phenomenal. Definitely leaves you guessing until the very last minute. Twists and turns, it's exciting, it has a great pace, interesting characters. This one has the underlying like Greek tragedy, mythology stuff, which I find interesting, like I've mentioned already. I highly recommend both of his books. I think The Silent Patient is my favorite of his too, but I still give this one 5 stars. I think his books are amazing. I think he was originally a screenwriter. He originally wrote movies, but he's writing books now and they're fantastic. I highly recommend both of them. Next I have 2 books by Leon Moriarty. I've read all of her books. So the first one is 9 Perfect Strangers, which they made into a TV show. So here's the summary. In 9 Perfect Strangers, 9 people gather at the Tranquillum House Resort for a 10-day wellness retreat run by a former businesswoman named Masha. While these strangers get to know each other and grapple with their own issues, they start tough questions about what exactly is going on at this retreat. This book is, I like all of her books. I know they're not for everyone, but I think they're really interesting. They keep you entertained. They have a really good pace. There's like a big secret at the end, but it's nothing like completely outlandish. This is probably of all of her books the most outlandish in my opinion, but in a good way. The show I wasn't able to get through. I watched maybe 2 episodes and I couldn't watch it anymore. The book is way better. I can't think of a time when the book wasn't better than the on-screen adaptation, but if you watched the show and liked the show, I think you'll really like the book. If you watched the show and didn't like the show, I think you'll really like the book. So I give this one 4 stars. I like all of her books. Leon Moriarty, I think she's great. And then the other one that I read is Apples Never Fall. The synopsis for that is Apples Never Fall follows 4 Delaney siblings after the disappearance of their mother, Joy Delaney. The police soon identify their father, Stan, as a possible person of interest in her case. As they try to unravel the mystery of what happened to her or where she went, the four siblings, Troy, Brooke, Logan, and Amy, are forced to confront truths about their relationships with each other, with their significant others, with their parents, and about their parents' marriage. To complicate matters, there's also a strange young woman who showed up at Stan and Joy Delaney's door a while back, and who is now nowhere to be found. Aww. This one's interesting. This one's kind of more of like a detective novel than some of her other ones, kind of. But again, it still just kind of goes into, you know, families and personal struggle and just kind of learning things as you go, finding things out about this family. Very similar to Malibu Rising, very similar to a lot of Leon Moriarty's other books. Her books are all like basically the same. They're all the same, but they're all so good. I think they're all great. This book was great. I liked it better than 9 Perfect Strangers. Both of them are really good. I give it 4 stars as well. Okay, next is The Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Boulet. In The Firekeeper's Daughter, Donis Fontaine's life is split between 2 communities, that of her white French-Canadian mother and the other of the Sugarland Ojibwe tribe of her late father. When Donis witnesses a tragic murder, Donis finds herself involved in an FBI investigation into drug trafficking in her community. However, the investigation will uncover secrets and threaten many people, including many she knows. In this thrilling and dynamic story, Boulet tells a tale that is suspenseful, insightful, and emotionally complex. Everything in that synopsis is true. Suspenseful, insightful, emotionally complex. It is a young adult novel, although I will say, as a content warning, there is themes of SA in this novel, but I really enjoyed this book. I loved all the cultural themes for the Ojibwe tribe. It was very fascinating, and it's also kind of like a police investigation, which is my favorite. I love true crime, and I love reading books about untrue crime. So I recommend this book. I give it 3.5 stars. It was really good. Next is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I think these 3 books I technically read like maybe within the first couple days of 2022, but I went ahead and stuck them on here. Okay, my heat kicked on, I apologize, but there's literally snow on the ground, so I'm not about to turn it off. Okay. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Addie LaRue is a young woman who trades her soul for immortality and a life of freedom. She can live forever, but no one can remember her. It's a bargain she strikes with the devil out of desperation and a desire for more. 300 years later, Addie has learned to survive, but is still living a mostly invisible existence. Then she walks into a small New York City bookstore and meets a man who can remember her name and face. This book it's been all over. Like, people talk about it a lot, and for a reason. It's such an interesting concept. I love the characters. I love the idea. They really go in depth about what it's like to live as Addie LaRue, as somebody who literally, like, you meet her and she's like, "Hi, I'm Addie LaRue," and then you turn back and you don't remember her at all. So she can't have a job. She can't have a place to live. I mean, all the things that she's had to do over 300 years to survive is just fascinating. And how she has relationships, and it's just so good. I really enjoyed this book. I give it 5 stars. I highly recommend it. I really hope they make it into like a mini series or something, kind of like 9 Perfect Strangers. I think it would be fantastic. But this definitely makes me want to read the other book series by V.E. Schwab, which I think it's called like Shades of Magic or something like that, but she really knows how to tell a story, that's for sure. Okay, I've just got 2 more. Local Woman Missing by Mary Kubica. Local Woman Missing opens with a girl, Delilah, who disappeared 11 years ago, finally being found again. With her return, it reopens questions about what happened the day she and her mother went missing, and another woman, Shelby Tebow, who had disappeared soon before that. In this thrilling and carefully plotted domestic mystery, this community and these families must unravel the secrets of chilling events that happened from many years ago. I read this book in 1 day. I was enraptured by this book. It's another one of those like kind of police investigation type books. People are missing. It goes back and forth from like events from 11 years ago to like current events. So again, if you don't like that, you might not like this book, but I couldn't put this book down. I give it 5 stars. The twist is, it's crazy. It's really good. Highly recommend. I immediately went and read a couple weeks ago, so technically in 2022, another book by Mary Kubica. Not good. Very disappointed, which I'll have to cover in another books video, but yeah, this one, really good. But she has a few other books. I'm still gonna try some, but this one's better than the other one I read. And the last one is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. It Ends With Us is about Lily, a woman who grew up in a small town in Maine who has worked hard to get where she is now. She graduated from college, moved to Boston, and started her own business. So when she feels a spark with a gorgeous neurosurgeon named Raoul Kincaid, everything in Lily's life suddenly seems almost too good to be true. However, part of her can't stop thinking about her first love, Atlas Corrigan. Then Atlas suddenly reappears in her life, leaving her to question the relationship she's built with Ryle. This is another one of those books that is kind of all over the place, talked about, especially on like book TikTok and stuff like that, and on book review sites. And Colleen Hoover has tons of books. I kind of thought she would be like my new Leon Moriarty. I was so excited to read some of her books. I started with this one because it was kind of the most talked about. There was not a single part of this book that I enjoyed. I don't usually give scathing book reviews. As you can tell, I pretty much liked all these books that I read. This book was bad. It was bad. If you love this book, I'm so glad. I'm happy, but I hated it. I really had to force myself to get through it. I give it 2 stars. I just don't think it was good. I don't really want to go into why because it'll kind of ruin the book, but it just kind of like repeats a scenario over and over, and then the ending is like too happy, which is like something I never thought I would say, but I really hated it. And I think that I hated it more because it was so hyped up. I had all these expectations, and I really thought it was going to be like a Leon Moriarty book, and it was just so bad. So I really don't think I'll read any of Colleen Hoover's books again. If you have read any more of her books and have some thoughts about them and think I should read them, then please leave a comment. But I give this book 2 stars. It was bad. Maybe even 1 star. All right, that's it. Those are all the books I read in 2021. I feel like as I was writing this list, I felt like there was another one that I was missing, but I can't figure out what it is. So I plan on reading a lot more books in 2022, so I might do these videos more often, maybe at the halfway mark, because I've already read 6 books and it's only January 15th. So I might do another one in a few months. But anyways, if you enjoyed this, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel so you can see more of my videos, and I really hope you leave a comment below telling me what your favorite book was that you read last year. Thank you, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!